Hi, welcome back to Raven Views the News. My name is Adam Erickson,
I'm Suzanne Ross.
and today is Tuesday, May 3rd. And we did a video yesterday on the death of Osama bin Laden, and we wanted to do a little follow up today.
Right. Yesterday we focused on the difficulty of responding to a violent person in this world and the moral dilemmas that we face in responding to violence without becoming violent ourselves, without perpetuating the violence, without creating more victims. And today, Adam and I are very struck by the calls for unity that are coming from President Obama around the death of bin Laden and the way he is calling up the unity that we felt on 9/11 and trying to somehow generate a sense of community, of shared goals and commitments around these deaths in order to move forward the political agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, Adam, you have some of the specifics of what he's been saying.
Yeah, on Monday, President Obama said, "Last night, as Americans learned that the United States has carried out an operation that resulted in the capture and death of Osama bin Laden, I think we experienced the same sense of unity that prevailed on 9/11. We were reminded again that there is a pride in what this nation stands for and what we can achieve that runs far deeper than party, far deeper than politics." He says that over the years our unity has been frayed a little bit, and we have no illusions of the difficulties that await us, but he wants us to sustain this unity that we feel by the death of bin Laden. And the media are following him along and calling for this unity. Nobody has asked really any questions about this. Everybody is saying, yes, let's unite behind this. This is a joyful, happy time. And we should continue this unity that we feel. What is the problem? What might the problems be in finding unity? You see it throughout human history, and mimetic theory really points to this. Throughout human history, we have used violence against people that we think are truly guilty of causing a threat to our community. And in that violence against this person or this other group, we find unity. The crowds cheer behind this. This is what ancient sacrifice is all about, finding unity in our violence against someone else. It's interesting to me because this is the same thing that Osama bin Laden was trying to do with his group. Listen, guys, let's fight against the evil empire. Let's fight against the evil Satan, and let's unify against this. At the same time, what might be difficult for us to understand as Americans is that we're calling for the same kind of unity.
Right.
Violence, out of this violence, we are going to say that we are unified because we killed the threat.
Right.
There's a danger in that violence, though. There's a danger in finding unity.
Yeah, I think you're right to point back to ancient sacrificial practices, because it is true that we do experience a sense of unity when these things happen. We do very easily come together around a murder, an expulsion, and a victim of our own violence. And the danger of that is is that we become dependent upon violence for our unity. And so we begin to, whenever we feel our unity fraying, we look for a victim. We look for a place to discharge some violence so we can be united again. And I think it's just very interesting that President Obama is going back to ground zero on Thursday, to go back and touch that point of death. I mean, it's interesting that it's called ground zero because it is sadly a place that was generative of identity and of unity. And that means that what we've done is use death to create something. And when you do that, you become fascinated by death and you become dependent on death.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's very important to make a distinction between President Obama's very natural and commendable instinct to go back to the point of loss and comfort people who suffered loss there, and to go back and thank people who responded to an emergency with heroism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's quite wonderful. But he's describing what he's doing as an effort to constitute unity. And when he's doing that and saying it's the same thing that we feel about the death and the murder of bin Laden, and that's the danger. He's not saying let's create unity around helping people, around compassion towards these victims, although he's demonstrating it. Do you see where difficulty is?
I see what you're saying, and the problem, I think, is that when you find unity through violence, you're going to keep going back to violence.
That's the fear.
You're going to have to do that, right? That's what you're saying. But there's also another model. And if you find unity through compassion, through going to the victims, through going to those who are suffering from this tragic tornado in the southern parts of the United States, if you go and you help people, that's a different way of finding unity. That's unity through compassion. That's the difference that we see between these acts.
Yeah, and that the thought just occurred to me that the difference is in the difference. In other words, when you respond to a tornado victim, you're responding to someone who's like you. You see their similarity to you. They're a fellow human being who's suffering. When you create unity with violence, you're creating unity not around a similarity, but around a difference.
Right.
That this person, these other people are not like us.
Right.
They have nothing to do with us. They deserve to die and do not deserve to be part of our community.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the risk that I think is that Obama's playing with fire here.
And the other danger about always having to go back to finding unity through violence is that you're going to end up creating more enemies. You're going to end up projecting all of this evil and malicious intent upon other people to make that distinction, to make them be fundamentally distinct from the rest of us. You need to have enemies, whether they are real or perceived, so that you can find unity against another.
Well, and because in that, if you make meaning out of the violence, the meaning you're making is your own goodness.
Right.
So, and you're making a dividing line between the good guys and the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is, it's just very dangerous to use death as generative of anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Adam and I went back this morning to an essay by the theologian James Allison, who is a friend of the Raven Foundation and someone who we admire very much because of the work he's doing in applying mimetic theory to theology and to looking at the anthropology of religion.
Mm-hmm.
So
James wrote this article. It's called Contemplation in a World of Violence, and it's out of his book On Being Light. And James says this, commenting on the tragedy of 9/11.
Yes.
What I want to suggest is that most of us fell for it. At some level, we were tempted to be secretly glad of a chance for a huge outbreak of meaning to transform our humdrum lives, to feel we belong to something bigger, more important, with hints of nobility and solidarity. What I want to suggest is that this delight in being given meaning is satanic. When we are baptized, we are our godparents our godparents on our behalf renounce Satan and all his vain pomps, and empty works. And here we are, sorely tempted, at least, to find ourselves being sucked up into believing in just such an empty work and pomp. A huge and splendid show giving the impression of something creative of meaning, but in fact a snare and an illusion, meaning nothing at all, but leaving us prey to revenge and violence, our judgments clouded by satanic righteousness.
Mm-hmm.
He uses religious imagery.
Right.
What does he mean by this being satanic?
Mm-hmm. I think he's specifically referring to this attempt to make meaning out of something that has no meaning at all and is creative and generative of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Suicide is not a creative act.
Yeah.
Murder is not a creative act. It is just destructive.
Mm-hmm.
And to try to generate something out of that is the satanic element that religion talks about. And of course, James is also pointing out the fact that this way of creating unity has been undone
Mm-hmm.
by the Christian revelation.
Yeah.
And so what he's trying to warn us against is that this is not going to hold.
Mm-hmm.
What you were saying earlier is that we will need to continue to seek out more and more victims in order to maintain and fuel our sense of unity, because it fades. As Obama says, it has frayed.
Mm-hmm.
Our unity has frayed. So we need to reinvigorate it.
Mm-hmm.
And because in the old sacrificial, what you did was you had another sacrifice.
Right.
When the unity frayed. And so when we go out and create unity around death and destruction, we're simply repeating the sacrificial mechanism.
One of the terms that James uses quite often is Jesus as the forgiving victim.
Yes.
So this is the way that Jesus undoes the satanic mechanism. Because the satanic mechanism, there's no room for forgiveness.
No.
You have to keep using violence in order to find unity. What Jesus does is forgives the unity that people found at his expense.
Yes.
And says you no longer have to create victims in order to find unity. Now you can have another model, which is forgiveness, love, reconciliation, these kinds of things, compassion that we see in the southern United States at the moment. So what do we do now? When Obama is going to go on Thursday to rally us in this unity
Right.
at the death of Osama bin Laden, what can we do? How might we model a different kind of unity?
Yeah. I mean, the thought that came to my mind was that, rather than go to this, to ground zero, to this touchstone of a community built on death and exclusion, that we do something symbolic to show that true community is universal.
Mm.
It includes everyone and sees the humanity in everyone. And I began to think about where are the places in our culture where people are being excluded from the community. And I, of course, began to think of homeless, of immigrants, of the sick and elderly who can't afford medical care, children in poverty who are not seen as valuable enough to spend money on their school buildings. And I just thought, I wonder if either physically or symbolically somehow on Thursday, rather than going to ground zero, we went to some of these places, go to a mosque, just stand there. I don't know, it just seemed like if we're going to physically go somewhere, let's go somewhere that creates a symbol of community that's radically different than the symbol that Obama's trying to rally us around.
Mm-hmm. It's a very challenging proposition that you make, because it's hard to stand with the marginalized of our culture. But that's what going back to Jesus, that's what Jesus does. Becomes the victim, the marginalized, and invites us to join him in doing that, to follow him.
Absolutely. And I just, the way this is being highlighted for me is that when Obama, I think it was last night, he had a dinner with the congressional leaders from both parties, and to try and focus on solving the problems that are facing our country. And instead of saying to them, let's create unity around solving the problems for the American people,
Yeah.
which should, I think, be sufficient, a sufficient goal, he said, let's take advantage of the unity we feel about the death of bin Laden to work on these problems.
Right.
And to me, that is the difference that we're trying to point out to.
Well, and this is where you see what people are thinking that we will say, the scapegoating of bin Laden, because by diverting all of this attention, unity towards bin Laden, we are distracted from the problems.
What we're arguing
about. And thus we will not find solutions to these problems that we're arguing about.
Right.
It'll only delay any solution that we
Sure.
might possibly find. So,
Yeah. Well, it's classic scapegoating.
Right.
It's to use a scapegoat as a distraction
Mhm.
from what really divides us, to pretend that we've found unity,
right.
when what really divides us is still there.
Yeah. So I
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm struggling with is some people are saying we should mourn bin Laden's death. Some people
Mhm.
are saying we shouldn't mourn bin Laden's
Yeah.
death. I don't know where to stand on that. I tend to think that we should mourn bin Laden's death, but I'm not going to tell anybody to do that. What I'm mourning most of all is just our cultural tendency to, what it seems to me, to glorify violence, to
Mhm.
find unity at the expense of violence. And for me, that means that we have not evolved very much during the last 6,000 years of our human existence, because we're going back to the same patterns that we've always had. And we need leaders to help us
Yes.
grow out of that.
Yeah. If President Obama wants to show leadership, he would disavow unity around death.
Yeah.
He would disavow it. He would say that this is not worthy of us,
Mhm.
and show another way to the world, because as you say, the world and Obama and Osama are all caught up in the same thing, in
Yeah.
making meaning out of violence.
Yeah.
And so Obama is not leading us down any sort of innovative or creative path right now.
So those are our continued thoughts. We were hoping this would be a 10-minute video, but I'm sure it's
Yeah.
more like 20.
I'm sure.
And
Sorry.
we'd like to hear what you think. Thanks.
Thank you.